6 years ago, Craig said, I'm going to start another hotel investment conference. I'm like, what? But I will say that the only thing that you look around the room, this is a very successful conference. The only thing that's grown more is in the past 6 years has been his hair. So good job, Craig. I want to give a couple introductions here, but I want to reset I want to get a little audience poll to see how important we think labor is these days. So you only have 3 answers. So there's 1, 2, 3. If you think the labor issues we're facing are the third most important thing in our industry, raise your hand. If you think they're the second most important thing in our industry, raise your hand. Got 1? Boy, you're an outlier. If you think it's the single most important thing in our industry, raise your hand. Okay, so good topic. I want to start with some advice first from my experience in the industry. And it's something I want to reset our frame of mind here. This labor problem will not be solved with financial engineering. Boo-hoo to all you MBAs and Wall Street people, okay? It's going to require a shift, as you'll hear from our panelists today, in emotional intelligence. So I want to do a short exercise, no more than 20 seconds, to get our frame of reference for today's panel more creative and more appropriate to what reality is. And I want everybody to participate. Ed, my new friend Russell over there, Adrian, Athena, please participate. It's only going to take 20 seconds. So raise your hand. Repeat after me. Raise your hand means raise your hand. Oh, good. Excellent. Raise your hand. I am a housekeeper. Get it? Now, all these solutions require an empathy, emotional intelligence about housekeeping. My mother was a housekeeper. She and my aunt worked at the Holiday Inn in Garland, Texas. I know a little bit about that. And it is one of the most difficult jobs in America. How many of you have cleaned 14 rooms a day in a hotel? Oh. Congratulations, you've got some empathy. But it's the median income is, and depending on the state, is between $15,000 and $30,000 a year, and it's below the poverty level depending on how many children you have. So, as we come up with all these solutions, and it's a business, we're concerned about our owner and investments. It's not going to work to say to the housekeeper, our owners are very concerned about the increase in wages because they can't buy a new private jet. Boo-hoo, okay? So put that, hotel conferences don't talk about this, but this one does. It's a great conference. And the solutions we come up with, there are massive and important solutions in this room with the creativity. And they're not just financial engineering. So let's get started with our panel. And I want to emphasize, again, it is a business. And a business that depends, that the labor issue is severely impacting the value of hotels. So Kirsten, with HVS, I'd like for you to start. And initially, though, I'd like to everybody to just short introduction of yourself, your name, your company, what your experience is, and then we'll start with the first panel. So you want to start? Thanks for getting up here without your crutches.
Hi, I'm Geoff Graf. I'm with Hogan Hospitality Group, Vice President of Business Development, and I'm an imposter today. Pat Mitchell was supposed to be here, President of Hogan Hospitality. Unfortunately, she's had an untimely case of COVID, which is one of the struggles that we all have as an industry these days. Hogan Hospitality is what I would term a small management company. We're approximately 20 hotels, give or take always. And we manage slightly over 3,000 rooms right now with about another 800 in the pipeline coming up in the next 6 months. I do emphasize that we're a smaller management company. I was talking with Steve earlier today. We like that because it provides us with a lot of flexibility, which we'll talk about as we talk about labor today, and being able to adapt and converse with our owners, converse with our employees, and develop strategies that work for everybody. So I recently, brought in a new mascot to the company over the summer last year. And for those of you that are old enough, you may remember Gumby. Well, everybody in our corporate office now has a Gumby on their desk because we are flexible. And again, that's going to be a key to one of the things that we're talking about today regarding labor.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Kirsten Smiley with HBS Consulting, and I'm based here in LA. And we're known as the hotel appraisers and consultants, and we do provide a wide range of services to our hotel owners and developers. We do have a capital markets and brokerage team, and we do executive search and design and asset management. And when I was asked to join this panel, and I had a panic moment. I was like, I don't know much about labor, but I was reminded that we do analyze and underwrite hotels every day. And this is a question that we get asked every day. How is the labor issue impacting hotel financial performance and valuations? And that is something that we look closely and hope today can provide some insights to all of you.
Good. Thank you. Scott? Kyle?
Hey everybody, my name is Kyle Allison. I host a hospitality show called Hospitality MD, so check it out if you haven't heard of it. But my day job and night for everybody in the business, but I'm the GM of a country club in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is operated by a company called Reading Hospitality Management. We own and operate one hotel, which is actually the #1 DoubleTree by Hilton in the brand. We have a country club, we're opening a restaurant, and catering and an art gallery. We also have an off-premise catering company and 3 corporate cafeterias. So we're a small management company that's heavily food and beverage focused, and I'm honored to be here today.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Travis Gemoets. I'm with the law firm of Jeffer, Mangels, Butler, and Mitchell. Many of you know Jim Butler. He's the founder of the Global Hospitality Group at my law firm, which is a multidisciplinary group of attorneys who service the hospitality industry in every facet, from putting together deals, putting together purchase arrangements, management and negotiating management agreements. And then my specialty is the labor and employment side. I am a traditional labor attorney on management side with respect to union management relations, as well as a defense attorney for class action claims, PAGA claims, which is often on everybody's minds these days, and any other type of employment claims. I personally am based, we have offices here in Orange County and in Los Angeles, and as well as in San Francisco. Our offices are all in California, but as the word global indicates, we are truly a global practice, brokering deals on every corner of this planet. And one nice benefit of being a labor attorney, I don't have to take the bar in any of the 49 states. So I can practice labor law in any jurisdiction covered by the National Labor Relations Act. So my partners have sent me to far-flung places such as winter in Dearborn, Michigan. Thanks, Jim, for that. And then some more exotic garden spots. So we always look forward to these events, and we do realize that one thing that hotels has are employees, and that's where we come in. So thank you very much for inviting me on this panel.
KB?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bijal Patel. I wear 2 hats, third-generation hotelier, CEO of Coast Guard Hospitality. We're based out of Santa Cruz, California, but also past chairman at the California Hotel and Lodging Association. We are the largest state lodging association in the country, the voice of 6,000 hotels here in the state of California. And we also have a hospitality foundation with a $3 million endowment specifically to encourage young professionals to enter into a career in hospitality. So I'm excited to kind of share a little bit more about that later today and how you can all get involved.
Great. Scott?
I'm Scott Arnhem with Gallagher. Many of you know my counterpart, Jackie Collins. I am on the employee benefits consulting side, so I work in our hospitality niche and specifically help owners and management companies with their employee benefit programs, with their labor issues, recruiting, retention issues, and strategically deploying their benefit programs to help with those problems that they have with recruiting and retention.
Great. Okay, we're going to start with our different categories. We're going to talk about valuations, operations, legal, et cetera. So when you do speak and you head off, we got to keep our remarks pretty short, 5 to 7 minutes, because we only have 45 minutes. So Kirsten, can you tell us what's happening with valuations, development, and all those problems?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually a question that we have to answer every day. And before I got here, I did a little study and I surveyed hoteliers in California. And this might be a little bit of an extreme case study because I surveyed specifically hotels within the city of LA. As many of you know that in last August, City of LA passed a hotel worker protection ordinance, and after that became effective, housekeeping were not to clean more than 3,500 square feet of rooms, and if they do so, the employer will have to pay them double the salary of that day. And I asked all the hoteliers what are the impacts that they're expecting from this change, and the result
I didn't boot you off.
they're expecting their salary and wages to increase anywhere between 50 to 100%. And that is a huge number. So if you were running at an expense ratio of 30% of your revenue, say in 22, and you will probably be seeing this number to go up to 33 or 35%.
Let's go
and that is a huge increase if your revenue stayed flat and you are looking at potentially losing 300 to 500 basis points of your NOI, and that could potentially translate into a 10 to 15% decline in value if your revenue stay flat.
Yeah.
So I want to say a lot of the hotels were fortunate enough to be able to keep up with the increase in wages in the last 12 months, and it looks like revenue continue to be increasing going forward. But I think a lot of investor, buyers, and lenders, when they look at hotel assets, they are more careful when they are underwriting, and they might increase their parameter, increase their cap rate when they are going into a market that they are not so sure about what are the labor cost increases are. And so the example I gave was for city of LA, but many of the cities in California experienced the same changes. I think Long Beach was already doing so, Santa Monica, and I think Glendale, Anaheim, and Irvine are passing similar ordinance. And this is something we're seeing statewide. And so the hope is that our revenue continue to keep up with the increase in wages. And I would love to hear fellow panelists, what are some of the solutions that you might have for this issue that we're experiencing?
Let me ask briefly, because I know some hotels in the LAX market, we've got the Hyatt Regency there and some others, and I know Marriott is adding to the guest bill a charge for the Employee Protection Act or whatever. Have any of you seen that, or has that
harassment
been affected yet?
Yeah, that's have been talked about. Actually, when the ordinance first passed, many of the hotels have talked about adding that fees, and I think some people are still not sure about imposing that fee to the customer, especially earlier in the year at the State of Union. President Biden was saying that no more fees. That I think he was referring to the resort fee, but I think if you are adding more fees, that will raise questions. And I think it's one way to mitigate some of the costs that the hotels are carrying, but I think you need to be careful.
Let me just make a comment that I can afford to make because I'm 74 years old and I like to tell the truth. It appalls me that the name of this thing hypocritically is Employee Protection Act or whatever. That means in our hotels, now you can, to protect the housekeepers, you can only do 8 rooms or whatever it is, 3,500 square feet. Unless you're in a union and you can do 14 rooms or 12 rooms. So there is, it's obviously a ploy to force hotel owners into unionizing. I'm not anti-union, but I also think we ought to be honest about calling things what they are. So I know Craig probably won't ask me back next year, but that's all right. So, okay, thanks. Good. Well, let's start with operations, and we'll have some more questions on valuations. Yeah, but that is, we have several owners who have lost tens of millions of dollars because of that single ordinance. So the solutions to this, I said earlier, are going to be empathy for our staff, and that's operations. So I think more than ever, the importance of management is for owners is coming to the fore this year and next. So I'd like to talk about what management companies are doing with the labor issues, and hopefully we'll have some creative ideas. So let's start with Geoff.
Well, thanks. And I'd like to say never doubt the ability of a politician to screw things up for us. Some of the things that we deal with, as Steve's indicated and Kirsten has indicated, they have no idea what they're doing. I hadn't really looked at it from the standpoint of, I guess I take an optimistic view, but they're really trying to force us into unions, but it makes perfect sense. And they pretty much state it on a daily basis these days. But as I had indicated earlier in the introduction, what are we doing about it as operators? We've got a lot
our
of
California
challenges,
weather.
Not only with
This is our California
legislation
weather.
that's being enacted that is
Okay, thank you.
creating hardships on management companies, operators.
Good, my back's bothering me.
In terms of paperwork and following procedures. But as I'm sure
just moving
everybody's
all these water
experienced, just finding an employee is difficult, in particular in housekeeping. So some of the things that we've done in order to bring in employees, get them to come back, and we've been fortunate that we did retain most of our employees through COVID, which gave us a lot of benefits when we had the work opportunity for people to come back. And we did that by staying in touch with the employees through the entire period. Could be the general manager just calling, checking in with everybody on a weekly basis, even though there was no work for them or they couldn't come in.
I just thought I
Down
just
to
saw
the
that.
president of our company doing the same thing, getting on the phone, contacting those employees that, in our case, that she had some personal contact with in the past. That helped to bring people back in. The other thing that we've done is the flexibility. And you look at your policies and your standards and so forth. We've had to relax some of those. Now, I will say that from a standard standpoint, we haven't really relaxed it. But from a policy standpoint, it's gotten a little grayer. I'm sure we all have our handbooks and it's black and white. But we're a little bit more lenient when it comes to certain situations that an employee may have that's impacting their life and their ability to work, or something that they've done at work that may have been considered a terminable policy violation in the past. We're more likely to counsel to work with that employee to get through it, because retention has been the key. Like I said, we stayed in touch with all of our employees through the COVID period because we needed to retain them. One of the things that we wanted to talk about today is how does it impact your bottom line, and retention. Do what you can to keep your employees with you. You need to inquire about what are their goals. How often do you go out and sit down with a housekeeper, a houseman, somebody at the front desk, and ask them, so how are you doing and what are your goals and how can we help you achieve that? That's going to do two things. It's going to make the employee feel as they're wanted by you, that they're valued in the company, and also that they might have a future in the industry to move up. Providing that stability has really been a big help as we've moved through the process. And we have seen, some employees that, we maybe didn't think were thinking about a future in the industry. Maybe they were in school doing something different. leaning towards another industry where when you talk to them about, well, do you want to have a future in the hotel business? And could we help you with that? They're like, well, I hadn't thought about it, but that sounds good. I'd like to be the general manager someday. And one thing that, I refer to myself as a recovering operations person. I still remember enough to ask some hard questions, but don't ever let me actually operate. I couldn't check anybody in or check them out. If I was checking them out, I'm sure I wouldn't remember to collect the money. But I remember enough, and I know that I always told my department heads, employees, and so forth when I was a general manager that look, someday I'm supposed to be working for you. So how can we make that happen? So we take that philosophy out, and it may be somebody just wants to be the department head. How can you get them there? And is that going to keep them in the industry? But you really need to be communicating with your current employees. And you need to be pretty creative in attracting new ones. I'm not going to go into detail in the way you can attract new ones, but don't count anything out. I mean, it could be a Facebook post by your general manager who happens to know other people in the industry is the way you found a new employee that came in. So creativity is the key to attracting new people, and then you need to keep them. You need to retain them.
Good, good. Kyle, what are you guys doing to help with the problem?
So how does it impact the bottom line, and what are we doing about it? So I think it goes without saying, and we could all agree that turnover is expensive, training is expensive, overtime for the existing staff is expensive because there's not enough people to work, so you're paying them overtime. That's all expensive, but I also think it's important, especially for the audience here who may not be in a hotel every day with the people, to understand the impact of not enough help on the revenue and how that impacts the bottom line. So I'm just going to give just a couple brief examples to paint a picture of specifics of what that looks like. It's 10:42 p.m. and your front desk agent is at the hotel by themselves. The airport accommodations people call and say, hey, we have 50 rooms, distressed passengers that are coming in. Your front desk agent is burnt out, tired, and they're going to be going home soon, and they don't even know if night audit's showing up at 11. So what do tired people do when they're offered more business? They turn it down. So now you have somebody who's at the point of impact in your business who's making decisions about your revenue because they're tired, because there's not enough people. The same thing could be true if you're a salesperson and you're selling catering, but you also have to work on the weekend to manage it because there's no banquet manager. If they get a phone call for a function and they're tired or burnt out, or they were planning a vacation that weekend and that was their only time off, and it was a need date for your business, but it was also their free time for them because they have to do everything, they're going to turn it down and you're going to lose money. So the impact on revenue is tired people turn down business when you're not looking. So that's the impact. What do you do about it? I think it needs to be observed that this is not just a labor shortage, but a labor model issue, because even if your hotel is fully staffed by your labor models, is it truly fully staffed? Is the one person that somebody decided is okay to work at the front desk by themselves, is that really enough? Would one more person make the difference to not only capture the revenue in the example that I described, but to retain the person? If the cook has to wash their own dishes because on Sunday night it's too slow, we don't need a dishwasher on, it's not that the dishwasher doesn't want to work, it's that you didn't allow the dishwasher to work because you said it's too slow. Now the cook has to do all their own dishes, and they get burnt out and they leave. So I think if we're being self-aware, we need to examine the model that we've set forward for how we operate. Because we're having a conversation about labor and at the same time having a conversation about cutting labor costs. Which one are we doing? So I would say that's my big sentiment for people to think about today is, think about the vision that you set forward for how you want your hotel to operate, and think about the impact to people's lives if you just had a hostess at the restaurant door to greet people and capture that revenue, so the servers don't have to keep watching the door and they can focus on making connections and upselling with their tables. Think about the person to answer the phone at the front desk. And also now with technology coming out, all these text messages coming in, somebody has to answer those, answer the phone, check people in, and run towels up to the room. So that's what's happening in the hotels. I really do believe that the only way to solve the labor shortage is by solving the labor model. Think about the impact of one more person and how that might make people's lives easier.
I want to give you the Empathy Emotional Intelligence Award so far in terms of comments, because that's what it's all about. I know there are probably only 2 or 3 of you in the room old enough to remember when the hospitality business was really cool, fun, and sexy to be in, okay? I mean, attracting younger people to the business before COVID happened and before all these was a real positive thing for employees. So we need to figure out as we start the recovery and continue on how we can attract more young people into the business. And Mr. Patel, what's the HOA doing about these things as an entity?
A HOA or I'm part of CH&LA.
Yeah, AHLA.
So,
they had different.
California Hotel and Lodging Association. So we have as I mentioned in my intro, we have a hospitality foundation. So we formed this back in 2017, 2018. So we've kind of foreseen this challenge. It's not like this is something that is new. We've had these challenges pre-COVID. COVID accelerated those challenges. I think upwards of 80,000 associates left our industry in the state of California during the pandemic. And so when you look at that, the impact of that, that's effectively an entire generation of hospitality worker has now been, has now left the industry to pursue other things. So we have to make, our industry attractive to more young people. But I think we also have to change our perceptions, right? So I'm a 3rd generation hotelier. I grew up in the business, started sweeping the sidewalks. We cleaned rooms, did front desk, and accelerated up from there. But a lot of the new generation, they don't want to spend 20 years to become a GM. The next generation, they want quicker promotions, they want titles, they want progression, they want touch points with their managers and supervisors. So there's kind of, I think, a little bit of a shift that we have to do on this stage as well. And we are a lot of different people here, right? We're owners, management companies, brands, we're kind of fragmented. As united as we are, we also are all very different. And we have to kind of change some of our processes as well, because the next gen is not going to want to, start as a housekeeper and then eventually wait to become a GM.
Good. Well, we'll come back to some more operational issues later if we have time, but I don't want to miss the exciting topic of legal issues and labor.
Sounds like you're talking about me. Thank you very much. First of all, in our industry, we are one of the most highly unionized in the private sector of all industries. It's hospitals and hotels are number 1 and number 2. I represent both. And what's interesting is the talk of unionization is top of mind between Starbucks and Apple and you name it. There's been a lot of buzz about unionization and successful unionization campaigns. However, all that's done, it's barely moved the needle as far as the unionized private sector workforce still hovering in the 7% range, whereas in our industry, it's much, much higher. So, and it's important to note that we do have a general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board who is taking a very proactive approach, literally soliciting cases so that she can make new law in the labor world to overturn some precedents that were established during the Trump administration and prior thereto. So issues such as access, union access for off-duty employees to march and to picket in your hotels. Even if you're not a unionized hotel, what are their rights to do that? These are what issues that are going to be facing us in the next year and a half, 2 years or so, and perhaps even longer. So that's a very big concern. Now, one thing to keep in mind is very, very seldom do the courts throw us a bone as employers, especially in the great state of California. But the Ninth Circuit of all circuits in the United States recently gave employers a very big win, and it's incumbent upon all of us to understand what that is and how to use it. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Arbitration agreements. So California passed a law that said you cannot mandate arbitration for your employees. It had to be permissive. The employee could not be required to enter into an arbitration agreement as a condition of employment. Well, the Ninth Circuit just 2 weeks ago invalidated that provision. If you get my labor alert that goes out, you're well aware of this fact. But so now employers in California are free to mandate arbitration provisions for their employees. And this provides employers in California with a huge benefit, because one of the greatest scourges in the litigation world facing our industry, and really employers in all industries, are class actions for unpaid overtime, for missed meal and rest periods, and then of course for violations of the dreaded Private Attorneys General's Act, known as PAGA. So now with an arbitration agreement, you can force your employees to enter into them. Obviously you do it in a nice way, but it can be mandated. And these arbitration agreements, if well crafted, can prevent any employee who's entered into one from participating in a class action, bringing a class action, or even signing on to a class action or a PAGA action. So we have a powerful, powerful tool that was just recently strengthened in California. And I encourage all of my clients to roll them out. Now, there is one important caveat that must be spoken about in this room, which is in a unionized workforce, you can't simply mandate that your union employees sign on to an arbitration agreement. But what does every single collective bargaining agreement contain? Grievance and arbitration provisions. Now, those can be tailored when negotiating the CBA to allow the union arbitration process and the union grievance process to supplant any employee's right to bring a wage and hour class action or a PAGA claim in superior court. So it has to be specified in the CBA, but it can be done, and I encourage all of my clients who do have a unionized workforce to look at their CBAs and make sure that when it comes time to renegotiate them, that these protections, which are available to us in California and nationwide, are taken full advantage of. So whether you have a unionized workforce or not, you have options in this field. And we're much better off in arbitration on individual claims than facing a multi-million dollar class actions, which unfortunately have hit our industry very hard in recent years. The other thing that I do want to talk about is an issue that many of us might have forgotten about, the global pandemic that we had a couple years ago. Well, you might not remember, but California passed a law that says whether you're unionized or not, if you lay off your workforce or any part of them in certain industries, including, guess what, our industry, then you're required to give them recall rights as if they were, under a union contract. So these laws are on the books. Many cities passed them as well. San Francisco had a very onerous ordinance that required multiple steps. I am pleased to say that expired on Tuesday when our governor lifted the state of emergency due to COVID-19. But the state law still exists and is still applicable through the end of 2024. So be mindful of that for those who are rehiring, if there are people who worked for you before the pandemic, because they do have recall rights if they worked for you 6 months in the year prior to the pandemic starting. So those are some key legal issues that many people are not focusing on. We did speak a little earlier about the ordinance called the Employee Safety and Protection Ordinance. Now remember that the reason that this is the law that requires housekeepers to be paid double time if they clean more than 3,500 square feet in a given day for hotels with 60 or more rooms. So the bottom line is that does contain a poison pill. If you have a union contract, you can opt out of that ordinance if it's negotiated in your CBA. So obviously, if you already have a unionized workforce, something to think about because that can be sidestep those room cleaning requirements. If you don't have a union, then of course this ordinance is meant to encourage you to get one. And I have had many clients come to me and say, Travis, I think we might have to go union because we can't afford this ordinance. And so I've sat down with them and I've gone through the costs of going union for them in all operations and what that means for time immemorium, because it's not like you can just have a union for a couple of years and then not. And in every single case, just looking at the pure economics of it, it does not make sense on an economic basis to go union. And many unions have even said, look, all we want to do is unionize your housekeepers so that you can get around this ordinance. Well, if you believe that, then I've got a bridge to sell you as well. So the bottom line is these laws are meant to try to encourage or assist unionization, and we have to be mindful of that, and we have to make sure that we're not led astray and led into making a decision that might seem good on paper for the short term, but has much more harmful and long-reaching effects in the long term.
Thank you a lot. Craig, how much more time do we have on the?
About 16 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, before we go to insurance, I don't know whether another topic related to regulation, maybe California Hotel Lodging Association comments on it, or maybe you might want to, but immigration reform. I know there's some proposals in Congress to allow more workers to come in, but it's traditionally been an enormous source of employee and labor for our industry, and I just wonder if you have any updates, either of you, on what's happening in Congress.
Well, I'll speak to it briefly. Those of us who heard Biden's State of the Union address, he specifically mentioned immigration reform and encouraged Congress to pass some of the proposals that he's made that would certainly allow increased immigration to assist the very low unemployment rates that we have in this nation, and that would be quite sincerely a great benefit, especially to our industry. So, of course, we do have a divided Congress, as we all know. So there certainly is less optimism that some of the more expansive proposals that I think would be the most helpful to our industry and to industry in the whole. So I think that there's been some doubt that the more expansive proposals would pass. They're, the only hope for immigration reform, and remember, we haven't had significant immigration reform in this country for over 30 years. So there was the Immigration Act of 1990 that George H.W. Bush signed into law, and of course there was IRCA that Ronald Reagan signed into law in 1986. But since that time, there has not been any major immigration reform. DACA, of course, is still hanging by a thread. There's about 590,000 participants in that, and there are no one can sign up for DACA. No new people can sign up for DACA, although those in the program are permitted to stay in the program, and about 30% of all DACA participants are California residents. So certainly a helpful program, but not one that's going to be expanding anytime soon. So I think what we're hoping for in immigration is, it has to be bipartisan. So we're thinking baby steps, and of course we encourage everybody to make sure that their congressperson knows how important this is, because it's truly the lifeblood of our industry in many ways. And so increasing the ability for those pathways to citizenship, or even those able to work, even if it's not in a citizenship path, such as under DACA, are very beneficial. So we're not as optimistic as we used to be with the way Congress is currently aligned, but there is still hope for some bipartisan support. And finally, of course, then Title 42, that goes away in May of this year.
I'll just have to make a general comment here, just listening to this conversation. We've talked a lot about unions, and we're talking about Congress and, all these things. I think the piece that we're missing, why is this all occurring and what's going on? And yeah, we can say that, the unions are doing this and the unions are doing that, but what are we doing? What is it that we truly are doing as an industry? One thing, CH&LA, we focus more predominantly on state level issues and local ordinances. And in the pandemic, we saw a transition from legislating not in Sacramento, but in our local communities, in our local cities. And that's where you saw suddenly, this worker protection ordinances popping up in West Hollywood and Santa Monica and LA and, all these things. So there was a transition. There was a shift from legislating in Sacramento down to your local communities. And I think I'd be very surprised, I'm actually gonna poll the audience at this point, how many of you have invited an elected official to do a back of house tour at your hotel? How many in this room have actually done that? Two of you? I mean, guys, we have to do better, okay? The union's successful because they're engaged with their local communities. They're engaged with their mayors. They're engaged with their city council. We have to get better about engaging on the local level, because the reality is, now the local jurisdictions have been empowered through COVID. They've been given that power. It's going to be really hard for Sacramento or DC to start legislating again, because the local city councils have felt that power through the pandemic. So there is going to be an incredible, almost tug of war happening between, our state and our local jurisdictions. And for us, we need to do better about aligning. So I encourage all of you, contribute to your local city council races, your mayors, your board of supervisors, because that's really where things are really starting to really make an impact to our bottom line. You're seeing that in LA with this homeless ordinance that's coming up. A lot of different things are going to be happening locally. So we at CH&LA have actually set up a dedicated We have our CH&LA, which is to contribute to the state level candidates, but we also have now a CH&LA issues for local issues where we can contribute as well. We got ourselves involved in a Board of Supervisors race in San Francisco most recently. I mean, we're doing a lot of things locally here, but we need you all to step up as well. So if you're gonna do one takeaway that you're gonna take away from here today, that I would want you to do is invite a local elected official to tour your hotel, meet your employees, do a back of house tour, and really get to know you. So then the next time they're thinking about legislating, they'll pick up the phone call and they'll call you or your GM because they'll know who you are.
That's a great program and a great service to the industry. Before we get to Scott's topic, just so we'll all know where we are on it, how many of you own or manage hotels and do not have insurance? Pretty important, huh? All right, tell us about the labor impact on insurance.
Well, first of all, I'm the most anti-insurance guy there is. I hate insurance companies, specifically health insurance companies. Anybody out here an HR professional? Anybody in here human resources? Good. You have to understand, my livelihood relies on HR professionals, and with the exception of my clients, by and large, HR professionals do not have a pulse on their population. So I say that, take that with a grain of salt. But for the most part, they do not have a pulse on their population. And I'll get to an example here in just a minute. It's going to kind of dovetail into some of the things that Geoff shared a little bit earlier. Back in 2017 or so, we shifted away from focusing just on benefits and took more of a holistic approach to the entire employee. And so we focused on really 3 buckets. So when we go in and we talk to a client, we're focusing on 3 areas: pay, so career being one, which is pay, physical and emotional well-being, so that's all your benefits combined. You can lump health insurance in there. And then financial being the 3rd bucket. And that financial piece would be retirement, so 401k. I want to share a little story with you as a little bit of a takeaway, and I want to challenge each of you, either individually or to go to your leadership and your HR teams and do the same thing, because the surveys in today's world, I don't think are really pulling from the employee population what's needed. I was in New Orleans in January at a conference, and I was with a bunch of my competitors, so my peers. And as part of that conference, to our surprise, we were deployed out onto the streets of New Orleans, and we were told to randomly survey people and figure out what was important to them at their job. We were partnered up, so I had a partner with me, a direct competitor of mine, and we had to go and survey 10 people. Because I focus on hotels, I didn't want to go out in the streets, so we went hotel to hotel and just surveyed random people in the hotel. We got front desk people, bartenders, we got some housekeepers, I think we got a GM, we got somebody in finance, operations. And what we did, there was a total of about 30 of us in that conference. We all reported back, and by and large, not only the results that we got from the hotel workers, but also the individuals in the streets, the overwhelming results were, actually I'll ask this, does anybody have any clue where the importance of benefits fell? It was last. So as a benefits guy, I go to meetings and I think benefits are important. HR thinks benefits are important too. They're not. The overwhelming results of our straw poll survey that we did were work-life balance was number 1, pay was number 2, benefits was 3. So by and large, benefits is a big ticket item from a dollar standpoint. It wasn't that important to the everyday American. And if you're still wearing your housekeeper hat that Steve asked you to wear, I can guarantee you benefits isn't important, because for the most part, you as a housekeeper are probably going to be on, or you should be on, Medicare or Medicaid, and their strategies to help you be on that. So I just want to share that with you to go back and encourage your leadership, encourage your HR teams to really get in and understand your population and understand their needs and your wants, because when you know them and you know what they want, it'll help you with the overall recruiting and the retention, because that word will get out. When you care about them, they're going to tell their friends, and then that will help you recruit, retain people, and help you have a better, lively employee base. The second piece I want to talk about really quickly is specific to California, and Travis can probably expand on this a little bit more than I can because it's getting more into the legal landscape, is the pay equity and transparency laws that came across in January. So this is basically essentially pay everybody the same and make it known. So everybody knows what everybody makes. And according to the legislation, I'm going to read this. This is what they wrote. It's supposed to help employees understand how their pay is determined and how their employer, so how the company, how their employer is looking out for them. That's the purpose of the pay transparency. So I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit.
It's working great. So the new law came into effect the first of this year, and it first of all, there's for as long as I've been practicing, and that's 28 years, and probably beyond that, it's actually been a violation of the National Labor Relations Act, whether you're unionized or not, to prohibit your employees from sharing their pay information with one another. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen an employee handbook that says you are not to discuss your pay with your coworkers. Clear violation of federal law in every instance. So employees cannot in any way, shape, or form be disciplined for discussing their pay with their coworkers. Even asking coworkers, how much are you making? Perfectly permissible for employees to do that. Now with this new law, not only is it permissible, but it's encouraged, and the employer has to be proactive in making it very clear what the pay ranges are for the positions, for open positions. Now, we do know that some companies have gotten kind of cute when they say, salary range $20,000 to $250,000 for the position, and I'm sure that's not going to go over too well. But the bottom line is, be prepared for your employees knowing what everybody else makes. Don't try to get in the way of them sharing that information, and make sure that when you're advertising for an open position that you're following the strictures of this law.
Great. And one thing I want to make sure we realize in this is there's so many things. Your number one thing was work-life balance. There are so many things operators can do to improve the work-life balance of employees that are not costing another dollar. It's attitude, it's respect, it's having fun together, and we often forget that. We probably have time for one more question, one or two audience questions.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So any questions or observations? Okay.
Hang on for the microphone.
Let's bring it in. I'm going to bring it in on the board.
Am I live?
Hey, first of all, panel been very informative, so thank you very much. Travis, question for you. What do you think the likelihood of that legislation being overturned is, the one that you spoke about?
Are you talking about the pay equity one?
No, I'm talking about where you had,
The room ordinance?
not the room ordinance, where you had the arbitration ordinance.
Okay, yeah. So right now, the only court in the land that could overturn it would be the United States Supreme Court, and they've made rulings consistently supporting an employer's right under the Federal Arbitration Act to impose broad arbitration agreements that cover these laws. And in fact, last year in the Viking River decision, that struck down a California law that kept PAGA cases from being arbitrated. So that now can be subject to arbitration. So I don't see any changes in the law that would make it illegal to mandate arbitration agreements. What I do see, and this was part of Sonia Sotomayor's opinion in the Viking River case, the California state legislature might find ways to try to be creative to make PAGA claims no longer subject to arbitration agreements. So we have to keep an eye out for that. If there is going to be a change, it might be in that regard, and then it might take a couple years for SCOTUS to overturn it. So that would be the only potential tweak that I would see.
Okay, I don't think we have time for any more questions, but I do have one assignment for each of you. Remember, you raised your hand and said, I'm a housekeeper. Those of you staying at this hotel, before you leave, there's a little notepad, there's a pen in your room. Write on it, thank you for cleaning my room, and leave $5, and you'll make the world happier. So thanks to the panel. Great job. Craig, thank you.